Welcome all, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah, and I'm one of Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake's Program and Outreach Coordinators for the DMV area. Before we get started, we're just going to go over a very brief tech orientation to ensure everyone has a pleasant experience this evening. As you can see, we ask that you keep yourself muted during the presentation. If you need to get up and move around, at any time, please turn off your webcam to just, prevent any background interruption. We also have the chat function. Please feel free to use that. It's a wonderful way to ask for help or questions during the presentation. We will have time for Q&A, so please hold that till the end. And lastly, the discussion and presentation portion will be recorded. So if you do not wish to have your photo shown at any time, please turn off your webcam now. All right, on the next slide, we'll see our program lineup. We're going to begin with a land acknowledgement and an opening prayer, followed by a look at our sponsors, speakers, and funders for the evening, to which we owe a great deal of thanks. And next slide. If you would please join me while muted. Today we hold space for reflection on and gratitude for the land upon which we live and the local waters that support and nourish us all. We recognize that this land and these waters were stewarded by many who came before. For thousands of years, Indigenous people have called the shores of the Chesapeake home. Although we have lost many names, we ask to honor and to learn from their intimate connection, love, and appreciation for these sacred lands and waters. I'm going to put a link in the chat where we encourage you to learn more about this region by exploring that link. It will share some of the history of this region, of those original stewards, but keep in mind this link is a snapshot in time, most recently for the last 1,000 to 1,500 years of Indigenous history in our region. So just keep that in mind. And we will move to the next slide. And I love this prayer. This is a covenant with creation. And we have come to help protect God's creation. We have come as followers to commit ourselves anew to one another and to heal injustice and poverty. We have come to discover some new beauty every day in God's creation, the sunrise and sunset, birds, flowers, and trees, rainbows in the sky, the stars, and many forms. We have come to stand together against all threats to life, life in the forest. We have come to listen to the music of the universe, water flowing over rocks, the wind, trees, bending in the wind, raindrops pattering on the roof. We will remember always that God speaks to us through the beauty of creation, and we will try our best to answer God's call to reverence all that has been created. And thank you for taking that moment of reflection with me. We're just going to move quickly through the next couple slides. There are a lot of new folks in the room who are new to our network, and we're greatly appreciative of you joining us this evening. So here we have all of our partners and funders. We couldn't do this work without them. We're very grateful. On the next slide, you're going to see a little bit more about what IPC does. And you can think of us as a connector organization. We try to help fit all the pieces of the puzzle together between environmental and technical partners and local governments and faith communities. On the next slide, just want to mention our IPC Partner Pledge. This is a wonderful way to see congregations that are in your area that are already joining this movement and becoming environmental stewards in their faith communities. Next, we have our next Faithful Green Leaders training. Some of you have taken that with me. We are very grateful for your support. We have our first one in March 2024. We're looking forward to that. And finally, we have some available resources. All these links will be made available to you post the recording, and that's a great place to look for events, resources for your congregation, and the library of our webinars. Thank you so much. So finally, I'd like to jump right into the reason that we all are joined this evening to talk about decolonizing our relationship to the land And our first speaker of this evening is acclaimed author Sarah Augustine of the Ta-Wu descent, who works to bring social and political change through her activism. She's also co-founder of the Suriname Indigenous Health Fund. She's involved in work relationships with vulnerable Indigenous people, and also serves in leadership role on multiple boards and commissions to enable vulnerable peoples in the Washington state to speak for themselves and advocating for structural change. And she's also the co-founder of the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery, leading by example for her family and in the past for even her own congregation. She does so much. Please welcome Sarah Augustine, and we'll stop share right there.
Hello. Oh, it's such a pleasure to be with you. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with such a committed group of people of faith. It's just a privilege to be here, and just to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from Tacoma, Washington, which is the ceded territory of the Puyallup Nation. And I am the executive director of the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. And I'm going to share a little bit with you about my journey in developing a different kind of relationship with land. And so I want to begin by talking about what I have learned from my elders. So this is delving into the cosmology of my people, the Tewa people, specifically those people of the round earth and what we now know as northern New Mexico. And so I'm going to begin there and just talk a little bit about a worldview that maybe is not quite mainstream. And this is it. We live in a closed system of mutual dependence. We live in a closed system of mutual dependence. So what the heck does that mean? Well, a closed system, is a connection of elements that connected elements that work together to enable survival. And so the world, I'm saying, our Earth is a closed system. That means there's no new inputs or outputs. What we have here, the systems of life that we all depend on, the air, the water, the soil, what we have is what the system has always had. So as we generate toxic waste, there's nowhere for it to go, right? It stays here with us. And if we contaminate the water, there's no new water, no new air, no new soil. What we have is in this closed system, it's what we all depend on, and we're mutually dependent. I want to be really clear about that, because I've been taught to think about this, not just about interdependence with each other as human beings, but also interdependent with our other relatives as well. So four-legged ones and winged ones and water systems that are considered to be relatives, and also the insect people, the ones that I've learned to call the invisible people, those microbes in the soil that actually enable food to be produced. We are in a web of mutual dependence. And I want to begin talking about decolonization from that vantage point. This reality that we understand as Indigenous peoples, this is the reality of my people and the view of Indigenous peoples across the globe that I have had the pleasure of meeting with, and those elders who've been willing to sit with me and teach me. And so what the heck is decolonization? Anyway, we talk about decolonization. I'm going to say that decolonization specifically is relinquishing control of a subjugated people. Relinquishing control of a subjugated people. So specifically in the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery, we are accompanying Indigenous peoples, those peoples who are the water protectors and the land protectors across the globe. So when we talk about decolonization, there are a couple of elements that I want to share with you. In the Coalition, the way we think about this is that we affirm Indigenous cosmology. That's the first thing. So we say, we want to center our understanding of decolonization in the cosmology of Indigenous peoples. And it so happens that in centering that cosmology, we are taking on that role of accompanying and being a part of and relatives to land and water protectors, right? So this is, in fact, the decolonization of our relationship to the land as we affirm and center the cosmology of Indigenous peoples. Cosmology for us is not a metaphor. It's not a symbolic act. It is stepping into the actual work of accompaniment with people who are doing this important job, right? So decolonization is stepping in a concrete way, in multiple concrete ways, with folks on the ground who are historically subjugated and also embody a cosmology that is alternative to the dominant culture. We also acknowledge that decolonization is unsettling because it challenges the norms that we've come to accept as reality, right? Those people in the dominant culture. So it's quite unsettling. And that's part of the process of engaging in activities that are decolonizing. And decolonization is for everyone. So we often like to think about this process of settler colonialism as something that happened in the past to those people, to the other. When in fact, settler colonialism, that is to say, when an entity comes in and plops down its society on top of a society that already exists, and it says, this is now who we are, this is now what we are, when in fact there's already an intact, complete society underneath there, that this settler colonialism is in play today. It's actually defining reality for Indigenous peoples and for all peoples. So this system of a colonial empire is ongoing, not just for Indigenous peoples, but also for the beneficiaries of that colonial empire, right? So for those of us who historically benefited and continue to historically benefit from land seizure and the accumulation of wealth as a result of that land seizure and resource extraction, this settler colonialism is actually dehumanizing to everyone, right? And the transformation that we seek through seeking right relationship and becoming relatives to Indigenous peoples is actually transformation for ourselves, for Indigenous peoples, and for all systems of life, right? So it's a process of transformation that all of us get to benefit from. So talking about mutual dependence a little bit, we are mutually dependent with Indigenous peoples. And the interesting thing there is, in the dominant culture, in the church especially, there is this feeling that it's possible to choose whether to accompany Indigenous people or not. We can make that choice. Those with power feel that they could make that choice, when in fact, we are bound up with mutual dependence. And those people who are serving now as land and water protectors are actually doing so on behalf of us all. So for example, I'm going to give the example of the San Carlos Apache, most specifically the Apache Stronghold, who are working diligently to protect Oak Flat, this sacred mountain in Arizona that is scheduled to be blown up and turned into the largest open pit copper mine in North America. This mountain is going to be leveled, and there will be a crater instead, and it's due to be 2 miles across and 10 stories deep. An open pit copper mine will absolutely destroy the aquifer in that fragile aquifer in the desert in Arizona. It's estimated it will take more than 1 billion gallons of water to get that ore to the surface. And so while the Apache people, the San Carlos Apache and the Apache Stronghold are advocating for the protection of this place, they are not doing that just for their own people, but for all people that live in this region, right? So they're doing that for the people of Phoenix and the people of Tucson and all the people that depend on the Colorado River, which is now going to be supplying water to this mine, to this open pit mine. So this mutual dependence is becoming more and more obvious as we deal with the disruption of the systems of life. That is to say, climate change, but also contamination by extraction in fragile environments like Arizona. And so the mutual dependence is a part of reality. I call it reality with a capital R, whether or not those people who benefit from a colonial system acknowledge it, right? And so this process of decolonization is coming to terms with this understanding of mutual dependence. And then finally, repair. Let's just talk for a few minutes about repair. What does repair mean? So one of the things I want to tell you is that the San Carlos Apache, but also Mayan community that we work with in Mexico have shown me and have illustrated to me that water is a relative. It is not a resource to be conserved or depleted, either one, because it's a living system, right? It's not just a commodity. So in the dominant culture, this extractive logic of colonialism commodifies everything. It turns the systems of life into objects that are evaluated based on their value, when in fact that's not the case at all. We are in this mutuality, and repair is about not only returning land, but returning control of systems. That is to say, I mean, this is one of the things I think about. Indigenous peoples in North America, but around the world, are land and water protectors. If we wanted to reduce carbon emissions, what would it be like if we said, anytime we're going to, as a nation, give a permit for oil drilling or gas drilling, what if the decision-making body was the closest tribe? How might that impact the amount of drilling that we're doing? You know, how might that extractive process change? So we're talking about actually redefining control of resources and decision making. So repair is about more than just taking the excess that I have if I'm a person in the dominant culture of power. It's more than just taking the excess that I have and giving leftovers to people who have less power than me, right? We think of this as charity or being a really good person. And in fact, repair is stepping into the struggle with subjugated people who are taking responsibility for preserving systems of life, and that relationship building and saying, my cause is common with yours, your survival is my survival. Let us work together to determine how we're gonna face this together. That is a process of repair. It's all consuming, that is to say, it takes over every part of our life, and with good reason, because actually this extractive logic is detrimental to us all. And so that's the end of the time that I have. I really look forward to more time with each of you. Please come and see us at the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. We're a collaborative of volunteers across the United States and Canada and Mexico, even across the world. So there will be information about how to join us. And I also want to plug our prayer rising, which is happening on Saturday, November 4th at Oak Flat in Arizona. Please take a look at the flyer there. We'd love for you to hold a vigil and pray with us on that day. People across the world will be praying with us for transformation in our world. Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Sarah. I just want to take a moment. I really appreciate diving deep into this, this mutual dependency. And I agree that one of the things that you said towards the end just really stuck with me. It's like your survival is dependent upon my survival. And I really love the eloquently way that you just spoke about the whole systems and why the change is necessary. And it was just a very wonderful, wonderful presentation. So thank you so much. And I want to make sure that I give a warm welcome to our next speaker. We're very, very grateful to have one of the members of the Piscataway tribe. Thank you so much, Rebecca, with us here this evening. This is Jessica Swan, is the daughter of Chief Swan, and she's been so kind to share her evening with us and talk more about her people and what's going on with the Chesapeake Bay region. And I love this right here. Just looking a little bit more, we are the people where the river bends. And I know we're all interested in hearing more. Jessica, please. Sorry, I just lost you. I saw you for a second. Please go ahead and unmute and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Swan, as mentioned. I am an enrolled member of the Piscataway Conoy tribe here in Maryland. I am of the Beaver Clan and daughter of Chief Jesse Swan Jr., directly descending from Wanas, chief of the Piscataway, when the colonists first came to our lands here in Maryland. A little bit history about the Piscataway. The name literally means people of blended water. Our community was very much present along the water lines throughout the state of Maryland. Chief Wanas actually met the Ark and the Dove whenever the colonists decided to settle here in Maryland. So we have very deep roots with the land here in Southern Maryland specifically. To kind of go into decolonization and things like that, what I really want to touch base on is just land acknowledgement, which land acknowledgement and land awareness is so important, just because it's aimed at acknowledging and respecting and affirming the connections between Indigenous peoples and the land, serving emphasis in the importance of local tribal communities. As mentioned, when the colonists settled here in Maryland, we already had an infrastructure as a tribe, and nobody was given permission, nor were they forbid to settle here in Maryland, but they took it upon themselves for it to happen. And they created their own society over top of ours and taking the lands that belong to our ancestors. It's very easy for anyone to practice land awareness and just kind of know what's going on just through acknowledgement and inclusion of the Indigenous peoples here in Maryland. Sorry, I'm not very good at speaking in front of people, but Chief Wanas, as I mentioned, didn't say yes or no, but we tried to live side and side with the people, the colonists, as they settled here. And, eventually the land was stolen. There were many broken treaties, and we're currently fighting to restore some of those treaties and get some of the lands that were stolen from our ancestors back. So that way we can create sustainability within the tribe itself. We just acquired land for the first time in over 50 years. It is through our nonprofit, through Piscataway Eyes, where in the future we do plan on creating a community center to where we can not only further tell our history amongst our tribe and the youth of our tribe, however, but we also want to share that with other people in the state of Maryland. Our tribe was one of the first tribes to have contact and the first to lose our land, our culture, our language, and identity. So there's a lot of room that is there in order to bring our tribe and our people whole again. In the position, we've really just pushed that everybody follows through Piscataway Eyes to help us get back on track of getting our museum and cultural center up, so that way we can further share our history and really do a little bit of a deeper dive on having our elders involved. And we work hard for our community, and all of us, we all have our normal paying jobs, and by further decolonization and really breaking away and getting over that settler and colonist mentality, we can get back to having our infrastructure and our history being restored here in the state of Maryland. That's all I have for you guys today.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I hope you don't mind a couple of questions. I'm sure folks will have some. But
Sure.
I really appreciate you mentioning that just before we move on, that there was land. So there is active land being brought back to the tribe. And I feel like I read recently when I first reached out to Chief Swan that was a part of a southern part of Prince George's County. Please correct me.
That's actually going to be a southern part of Charles County. It's in Faulkner. That's actually a historical land right off of Allen's Fresh, where my family, specifically the Swans, were very prevalent, as well as other clans within the tribe, very prevalent there off Allen's Fresh and going down into Pope's Creek and the Potomac River. We were able to acquire a rather large piece of land through the nonprofit that is being put into a trust, a land trust for the tribe. That way, moving forward, the tribe no longer has to be subject to losing land that is theirs. So thankfully, my father, Chief Swan, my brother, my father's wife, Rosanna Swan, and myself, we all worked really hard to make sure that we could make that happen and do everything that we can to restore at least a small portion of the land back to the tribe and make sure that it's something that we don't have to worry about losing for any reason.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I do see quite a few hands up. Please don't lower them. We will have full Q&A at the end. Thanks for your patience. We have one more speaker with us this evening. And I'm excited to highlight one of our congregations, Christ Congregational Church in Silver Spring. We have Leanne Irwin, who will join us and just talk a little bit more about how their congregation came to the decision of doing the land acknowledgement, what that process has been, because for each congregation that might be a little bit different in terms of where you're located. So Leanne, we're so grateful that you joined us. Please go ahead and unmute and the floor is yours.
Yes. Hello, folks. I'm humbled and honored to be with you tonight. My technology is simple, so I am calling on my mobile cell phone. Remember those flip phones? And I'm a European American woman in my 60s, since you can't see me. A background is that when I was on the Forest Preserve Advisory Board for the City of Greenbelt, we began a process of seeking help to name a stream in the Forest Preserve in Greenbelt of a Piscataway name, because we wanted to honor that, acknowledge the land. So now I am part of Christ Congregational Church, which is a United Church of Christ in Silver Spring, Maryland. It began in the 40s, I believe, and in its heyday, there were 2 services and 500-600 members. We are now, as I'm speaking, we have made a decision to sell our property on Colesville Road, sell our building on Colesville Road by June of 2024. So we are in lots of transition. I am on the Stewards of the Earth Committee, which is one of the committees of the church. And the woman, Allison, who was in leadership when I joined that committee, had on her signature email the land that she lives on. And she had that website, native-land.ca. We began to talk about having land acknowledgement of our church community and thinking of having that as part of the opening statement of our community. And so I began doing some more work about that. On the nativeland.ca, it has 3 groups listed under Piscataway, and then it has another entity which it didn't have anything listed. So I began trying to look through some of those, and I sent a couple of emails, and then I spoke to staff at the Interfaith, at this organization that's running this event, and got to email and communicate with a couple of other people. So, and I also spoke to the National United Church of Christ, which has a great number of resources. And through those various conversations, we had begun writing land acknowledgement statements, but those are all on hold because we recognized, and in communication with other members of our congregation through the Justice and Witness Ministry, that we need to do more study together and conversation as a congregation. I understand that it's not a concrete, we're not going to write some concrete land acknowledgement, but that as we learn and grow, we will probably be changing it. And that is a humble reminder of our lack of knowledge, and treading respectfully and humbly as we seek more information. We are currently in conversation with having, as I said, doing some educational programs. There's discussion whether we want to have some kind of ceremony on the land we currently are on, we've been on since the 40s, and or when and if and where we move in the future. So we don't have any plans, but those are some of our thoughts. So I hope it was certainly in the new year, we're going to have some larger community conversations and invite some other people that I've been in touch with, possibly to do some learning with us, teaching us, with the vision that we will have some kind of ceremony and then have actual land acknowledgement that would be part of our Sunday service every Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. And I really love that there's going to be, a bigger discussion and possibly a celebration around this. Educating the youth is the greatest way to reform, any previous knowledge. I'm always encouraging folks to engage youth groups at their congregations, especially in environmental stewardship work. So they usually grab onto concepts and run with it. So that's great that would be an ongoing dedication at the congregation. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to thank you for joining us and sharing that. We hope that was the reason why we invited you. We hope folks will be encouraged and inspired to do the same. And thank you for also mentioning that we helped start that process. So please feel free to reach out to your regional coordinators. I myself, we're happy to point you in the right direction. And I see a couple hands. Kenneth, let's open the floor for some Q&A. Yeah, unmute.
Yeah, so this is a message, this is a question for Jessica Swan.
Okay.
I think
Kenneth, how are you?
Hi, how are you? There's an event at the library in Prince Frederick. Are you going to be a part of that? Is that next Wednesday? Do I have that? Am I combining events correctly?
There may be an event. With that, there are a few of us that are very involved in the nonprofit and kind of scheduling to be at the events. I would have to look further into which event specifically you're speaking on, but if it's somewhere here in the Tri-County region, I'm fairly positive that either myself, my brother, or my father will be present, or a representative of the tribe. Is there something specific that you I was just wondering what to about, or
what can we expect from one of those events? What will we learn?
So with a lot of those events, we really just like to share the history of the lands that people are on here in Southern Maryland. the Piscataway Conoy people and the Piscataway Nation, we have a great history just in Southern Maryland that I think a lot of people just aren't aware of. So, you know, the people that are involved in the core families of the tribe, you know, we go to these events in order to really just share the history of what exactly, where the tribe was, what we did, what our interactions were in the upbuilding of what is now Charles County, St. Mary's County, Calvert County. You know, and we really like to, we like to talk about that because, you know, with the development and everything that is going on in this area in particular, we also like to remind people that we as Piscataway people are still here. And because this is the land of our ancestors, we do need to be involved in the development because we have found ourselves in situations where we're building high rises or Aldi's or anything like that, and they come across remains of our tribe, and we weren't even aware that they were starting these processes, let alone telling them go ahead. And then we're kind of left with a situation where these are our ancestors that are being taken from the ground, and we, you know, they're basically telling us, well, what do you want us to do with it? And I feel very confident that I speak for my family that, you know, we want our ancestors to go back in the ground where you found them. You know, that's there. Nobody gave you permission to pull these people up or rearrange that part of history. And, you know, not that we're against development or, you know, anything like that, but, you know, we need to be involved. And that's really why I like to stress just land awareness of the fact that we need to be involved in these processes for that exact region. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and one follow-up question. If we as our congregation that's actually in Huntingtown were to do a land acknowledgement, would the tribe, would the Piscataway Nation be open to reviewing that land acknowledgement with us so that we can make sure that we are doing it correctly or appropriate?
Yes. So either myself, my brother Kyle Swan, or my father Chief Jesse Swan Jr. will absolutely work with people, because again, this is all about education and kind of removing that gap of, we don't want people to do these things incorrectly. We want people to be aware, we want to be involved, and we would love nothing more than to share that with everybody. So, you know, we can make sure that everybody is being respected and respectful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah, I want to make sure I did see your hand up. Please feel free to unmute.
Thank you. So I wanted to just, a couple of things. I have some comments, but also a question for Jessica. I want to acknowledge, and Jessica, the way you're talking about what you've done, setting up a land trust, it sounds like, oh yeah, and then we set up a land trust. I just want to say to the people here, that is no small thing. That is an amazing feat. And personally, I want to hear all about it because I think that's awesome. First of all, you know, based on the Supreme Court decision from 2005, it's not possible to return land to original trust land. That is to say, you can't return land to reservation. There's a lot of legal barriers to doing this, and it takes courage and this sort of stalwart perseverance to be willing and able to do that. So first of all, I want to give you props, and then I also want to, in a minute, ask you to tell me how that all worked, because that's awesome. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, how do the people here assembled support the work that you're doing? And I want to be really clear about what I mean by that. Restoring land is also no small thing. I spent almost 2 decades working on restoration plans together with the Yakima Nation on the reservation where I live with my family. And we have 200 acres that we have worked with the Fish and Wildlife to restore. And it's not easy. It's not cheap. I mean, we've been involved in lawsuits for practically the whole time. And from one entity or another. And so I'm wondering, what can these people of faith do to accompany you, understanding that people of faith really hold responsibility on some level for bringing the doctrine of discovery to this continent. So it's an act of repair to join with Indigenous peoples that are seeking self-determination themselves. They're like doing this amazing thing. How can these people here accompany you? And that's kind of what I want to ask. And then I also want to say, and Jessica, you didn't say this, and I don't speak for Jessica, I only speak for myself, but I do want to say, as you're attempting land acknowledgements and you want the partnership of Jessica or her family, please consider engaging this person as a consultant and paying for that time. Because as I heard you say, Jessica, you have a full-time job. Like all the years I've been doing this, I've had a full-time job, in addition to this. I've only been working in this job for a short period of time. It took all these years to raise that money. But what I'm trying to say is, Indigenous peoples have so much work to do in their own work for their own people, our own work for our own people, in our own thing. And when people of faith are able and poised to accompany, it's so crucial that that doesn't become us, sucking the life energy from Indigenous peoples. You know what I mean? Because we want to do this work together, but hey, you know what? It's expensive in time. I've worked, I used to say, I work the second shift. So I work my full shift, then I'm a mom until a kid goes to bed. And then I have this next shift that I do that's from about, 10 p.m. until the underutilized hours of 2 or 3 in the morning, and I did that for about 20 years. That's tough. Jessica, I don't know if you share that, but it's definitely, what you're saying is like, you're saying it like it's no big deal. Then we set up the nonprofit and the land trust. Holy cow! That's incredible. Wow, I'm so impressed by that. So that's a lot. I don't know how you want to respond.
Well, it has been tireless. And I will say, my father, my bonus mom, Rosanna Swan, both of them have put countless hours. They were the ones that started this nonprofit because when this all started, both, my father grew up learning about his heritage and, knowing that, as a Swan in this county, what comes with that, because that is, we have the ties for a long time. Our great grandmother's photo hung in the courthouse in La Plata because she was the oldest Native American living in the county. And we have those. Thankfully, my brother, we were able to grow up with that. And, there, as you see in a lot of Indigenous peoples and tribes, there comes a certain point when tribal council kind of changes to where, if there's nobody to continue teaching, it kind of just, the community is still together, but it kind of just fizzles out, and you don't have those talks and those conversations. And I would say about this has been a work for at least the last 15 years that I can speak on. For my dad and Rosanna Swan, they've been doing it for longer. But this was to create the nonprofit. It was really something that they wanted to do in order to provide resources to not only our elders, but the rest of our community in order to help. We give out backpacks when it's back to school time. We give out coats and boots in the winter time. We do, food drives, we do drops, everything like that. Because we never had a home base other than the living room, we were also able to, thankfully, because of the long history that my family has in the county and their relationship with St. Ignatius Church and Chapel Point, we also use that as a meeting ground. And it really just clicked one day that we need to have a place that we can call Piscataway Conoy home base. And my dad, Rosanna, the nonprofit, they were blessed to be able to raise enough funds, and my dad and Rosanna, doing different things to help supplement. They got real estate commission taken away. Like, that was not in the factor. We also worked very closely with the county commissioner's office and doing everything that we can to keep things local, and working with these people to try to see what can we do and how can we make this as easy as possible. And the big reason why we pushed to put this in a land trust as opposed to it just being in the nonprofit is because that nonprofit could go away at any time for any reason. And as long as it's in a land trust for the Piscataway Conoy tribe, it does not matter who is in the tribal council seats. That land belongs to the tribe, and that it's never going anywhere. It cannot be taken away. And that was very important for us to make sure that we didn't have to, one, potentially be the bearers of bad news that we don't have this land anymore, but two, we never had to put people in that situation again to the best of our abilities. And it took a lot of time, a lot of family time, but we realized that this was what was for the best of the community. Now, in reference to everybody on this call, anybody in my family would be happy to come help assist with land acknowledgements. And we love to educate. We are, now that we have the land, we are also, looking into doing larger scale events and inviting the public so that way we can share the history. But again, in order to do that, we have to get the word out about through Piscataway Eyes. We need people to know what the vision is, and we are willing to come and help anybody within the area or within the state of Maryland with anything that they would need direction or consultation on. We would be willing to set that up and to help.
I'm grateful to hear that. I know there's some folks on the call that would want to reach out. I do want to mention, because I saw Kay, I saw your question, and we do have a lot of mindful folks that want to be respectful and do the land acknowledgement correctly. So I did also put through Piscataway Eyes again through the chat, and this will also be provided in the email blast post recording, so everyone will have access to all the organizations' landing pages. We encourage you to go and do what you can. I want to make sure, though, I see a couple more hands up. Will, please go ahead and unmute. You had a question?
Sarah, this is Leanne. I'd like also to talk some point. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, please. Yeah. Will, do you want to ask your question, and then we can get back to
just very quick question. We've been doing land acknowledgements pretty regularly as part of our gatherings, but we've been unable to really identify which peoples actually lived in what is now occupied by downtown Baltimore. North, yes; south, yes; east, yes; west, yes, but not actually in the downtown Baltimore areas. Are there any good resources for specifically identifying the names of the people that used to live in this land? Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And as I mentioned earlier, our link is just a snapshot. If you've used that link before and we're still missing some folks, I can partner with you afterwards. Bonnie, who is actually your outreach coordinator, may have a resource for specifically that region, unless Jessica, you may know of some better resources that I'm unaware of.
No, I would recommend, you can always reach out again to my tribe specifically. We do have history within Baltimore, but as time progresses, the lines kind of get a little a little blurry of who was where and when they were there, as things do in history. But I would recommend that we reach out to all resources. And you know, my father is much more knowledgeable about those types of specifics on exact logistics of where exactly the tribe extended to. So we would be happy to help.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that offering. And I will thank Ruth for just putting in a Baltimore resource. Kay wanted to know, what can a congregation do for a land acknowledgement and or land awareness specifically for the Piscataway tribe?
So the easy answer to that is, you know, either myself or my brother can come out and actually perform a land acknowledgement for you, and we can also walk you through what would be appropriate based on your congregation and based on just the space in itself. We are happy to come out and take care of that for you folks at any given time, and also provide some resources that you can use in our absences, that you can execute on your own.
Thank you so much. Do we have Will, do you have another question, or do you just need to lower your hand? I want to make sure there's a couple pages. It's a full room, so I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. If you don't have your hand up or using the icon, you know, please feel free to unmute.
Hi, Sarah. I had a question. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, Leanne.
Hi,
please.
folks. Yeah. No. As I said, I'm on my. You know, I'm not with you on the current devices of the world. So it's my understanding that the state of Maryland recognizes two different groups for the Piscataway peoples. And so that's it makes it a little more complicated for those of us who are in Piscataway land to acknowledge peoples. And as we humans are, you know, we have common things and we have differences. So that's also part of this journey as a European American seeking out assistance and help and conversation. And I understand that, I'm sorry, I'm missing her name, but that Ruth Ann's, you know, acknowledged to me, like, okay, well, we're going to make mistakes, and that's also part of what we're doing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then a completely different thing is Sarah Augustine has some Mennonite history, and I'm interested in hearing a little bit about that, because one of the things my congregation is looking at is getting rid of our land, getting rid of our church, and maybe not having land, like having a church but not having land. So if she has any comments, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. So if you're contemplating repair, and so you want to engage in repair related to land, I would encourage you to drop me an email, reach out to us at the coalition. We'd be happy to accompany you through that process. There isn't really a sound bite that I can give you about that, other than that it's different in every single context. And so it is a thing that we do, is to partner with folks to engage in that work and sort of say, hey, what might this look like with a stance of repair? That is to say, not just sort of giving a gift or shedding responsibility for a property we don't want to pay taxes on anymore, but rather to say, what would repair look like using a reparative process? So that for us means beginning by telling the truth. The second is seeking repair side by side in relationship with Indigenous peoples. And then finally, seeking right relations or balancing power. So I'd love to engage in conversation with you. Please reach out to me. I'd be so happy to connect with you. So you can reach us through our website. dismantlediscovery.org, and I'll drop my personal email in the chat. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I am familiar with who you're speaking with, Lee, and it's Ruth Ann Purchase of the Lenape tribe, and she was so gracious to help us with our land acknowledgement as well. And she's just a wonderful resource for folks. She's on the Eastern Shore, so sometimes you might see an email blast, you know, concerning the tribes on the Eastern Shore. So yeah, she's wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, for putting your email address. I'll make sure that everyone's contact information is available again in the post recording. It's hard to believe we're coming up on the hour. I want to be mindful. We always open and close with a prayer. It's just part of our programming. But before we do that, are there any last questions out there? It's been a very, yeah, Kate, please unmute. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to mention to Jessica and Chief Swan that we recently were able to get an installation of a rain garden on our land in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And we do intend to have a dedication ceremony in the spring. And I was wondering if Jessica or Chief Swan could come to our ceremony for that.
That would be something that we are absolutely thrilled to be a part of. I will drop the email address in the chat so that way we can get that scheduled, so that way we don't lose anything in the mix here. But thank you so much for asking if any of us would be involved in that. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I am glad that you did ask that, Kay, because that was on my mind as well. So I'm just very appreciative. And Jessica, I can't thank you enough as well. I really would love to see more collaborative efforts, especially with the local people here and all the congregations, you know, that we support. I'm so grateful that we've shared a really informative and reflective night with each other. I'm going to give Rebecca a moment to just share slides. There's one closing prayer. This is a very simple prayer. It is a short and sweet from the Chinook tribe, and that's a Northern American Indian tribe. And it's just one that I came across and I've loved for years. And it's just so simple. It's, you know, it's one that you can't forget. And I say this often. May all I say and all I think be in harmony with thee, God within me, God beyond me, maker of the trees. And thank you for sharing this time with us. You'll be getting this along with all the resources, information, and contacts. We're really grateful that you spent this evening with us. And thanks again to our amazing speakers, Sarah Augustine, who's joining us from across the country, Jessica Swan. We are so grateful that you joined us this evening as well. And thank you so much for joining us, Leanne. Hoping that other congregations follow suit with the land acknowledgement. And thank you all. Please don't forget, if you do, I have one last, probably 30 seconds to drop this survey link. I know I've asked a couple times. My apologies for repeating, but it does help us improve the program and keep it going. So if you have any thoughts, please feel free to let us know. We always appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.